from the Mercy One studio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and the Uncommon Good provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences. Learn more at mchs.edu.
Welcome, folks, to the Uncommon Good with Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr. Every week, diving deep into the truth of Catholic social teaching and restoring all things in Christ.
The Uncommon Good is on the air. I'm Bo Bonner.
I'm Dr. Bud Marr.
We are coming to you live from these United States of America, here in the good old smack dab middle of the country, Des Moines, Iowa, where we both work for Mercy College of Health Sciences. I'm the director of the newly founded Center for Human Flourishing and senior advisor to the president on mission initiatives. Bud, what do you do at the old ball game?
Yeah, I'm the academic dean down at Mercy College.
And we're also underwritten by Mercy College, so we want to thank them for making it possible for this show to exist, mchs.edu. Bud, I'm not going to say that you're always a very chipper and lively person, but I know that there's just a bit of your soul that's tired right now because it's finals week, and so it's always a lot of work and effort to steer in, especially a summer semester, especially after we've all been going through. But it's also very gratifying to see students coming to full fruition with their studies for a semester.
Yeah, finals week is definitely a mixed bag. On the one hand, it is exciting to reach the finish line or get darn near close to it. In the Office of Academic Affairs, we probably do have more conversations about how to support students during this week. But the real thrill is when you can get to like the pinning ceremony.
That's right.
Where the students can begin to celebrate their finish.
mchs.edu. This is a long way to say that there's all sorts of ways to be a part of Mercy College and to start. Summer, fall, and spring starts. Online ones, accelerated ones, all sorts of ways for you to go be a part of the healing ministry that is Mercy College's call. That they got from Catherine McCauley and the Sisters of Mercy. So, again, thank you, Mercy College, for underwriting this show, mchs.edu. But probably not helping anyone out at the time when it comes to energy. I know that I feel like the minute you walk outside, it's microwave and you're zapped of all energy as well.
Yeah, with talking about this semester wrapping up, my mind can't help but turn to fall. And I don't want to jump the gun, but I am excited to have crisp air rather than whatever we would call this.
That's right. Crisp air, listen and smell the wonderful sounds of decaying football conferences.
You want to know how much of a nerd I was? Like, I was the kid who, in college, when it was this time of year, like rolling into September, I was actually excited about the semester. And, like, in our generation, kids would get a new album and, like, rip the cellophane off the CD box package. For me, it was textbooks.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was always very excited to start back up. Like you said, you got to go back. It's, time to be on campus again. Football's getting ready to start, and I always enjoyed it being cooler weather, so I'm with you very much on that one.
If you played your cards right that first week of the semester, there were a lot of, like, hit up the student organizations for free dinner and whatnot.
There's a lot of pizza, and there's a lot of carbs and glucose problems that I'm still working out because of the availability of free carbs in those very formative times during one's growth from a boy man to a man to a diabetic man. But yes, it is getting to be that time of year. I know everyone's like, it's only August 11th, but of course, like, we have the fair around the corner. We have all sorts of stuff that's indicating to us that life goes on, like the John Cougar Mellencamp song. But before we date ourselves any further to all of the kids out there who have no clue what we're talking about today, we're continuing our series talking about Leviathan and the Bride of Christ. This is part 3. Leviathan, the idea that the political philosopher Thomas Hobbes gave as a symbol for the modern nation state and its understanding of itself. And then, of course, the Bride of Christ being the dominant way we understand the church itself and how it exists in time and in relationship to things like the modern nation states. So if you get a chance, you can go on iowacatholicradio.com or on iTunes and go listen to the previous episodes that we've done on this. You can also listen to podcasts from all sorts of people who have the local shows here on Iowa Catholic Radio. But then you can also listen live on iowacatholicradio.com, or you can do the same if you download the Iowa Catholic Radio app. Bo Bonner, Dr. Bud Marr, this is the Uncommon Good. Stick around right after this. We'll be back. Thanks for listening to the show here on Iowa Catholic Radio.
Since 1924, St. Vincent de Paul has been helping those less fortunate work towards self-sufficiency. Last year, St. Vincent de Paul helped over 20,000 individuals with food, clothing, and shelter, while also offering classes in financial literacy, high school completion, career readiness, and prisoner re-entry. svdpdsm.org, 515-282-8327. Shop, donate, volunteer, serve. This message was brought to you by Homemakers Furniture.
The August Man Up West Power Lunch is Friday, August 13th at noon, St. Francis of Assisi in West Des Moines, with lunch provided by the West Des Moines Chick-fil-A on University. Deacon Mark Campbell will be discussing the year of St. Joseph and the consecration to St. Joseph. Learn more at iowacatholicradio.com.
Thanks to Blessman International for their support of Iowa Catholic Radio. Every year, Blessman International leads teams of Central Iowans to share the compassionate heart of Christ with orphans and vulnerable children in South Africa. You can learn more and sign up for a trip at blessmaninternational.org.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for supporting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. 515-225-6742. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Thank you, Big Red Q Quick Print, for underwriting the sports report. Family owned and operated since 1980, Big Red Q Quick Print is a full-service print shop ready to help you with all your printing needs with speed and accuracy. BigRedQ-DesMoines.com.
Thank you, Ashworth Vision Clinic, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365 on Iowa Catholic Radio. Ashworth Vision Clinic online at ashworthvision.com. Ashworth Vision Clinic, 515-440-4610.
Back to the Uncommon Good. Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr joining you this Wednesday. Thank you for listening to the show, Iowa Catholic Radio. But as we're saying, we're continuing a three-part series here, Iowa Catholic Radio, The Uncommon Good, Leviathan and the Bride of Christ, Part 3. If you want to listen to old episodes, it's easy to do. Go to iowacatholicradio.com. You can see where it says shows. Click on The Uncommon Good. And not only does it have the past few shows, but it literally has all of them. You just have to scroll down and listen to them. So right there embedded on the website, you can do that with all the local shows. iowacatholicradio.com. You can also listen live, donate, sign up for newsletters. You can do the same with the Iowa Catholic Radio app anywhere that, after you download it, anywhere that you have data. And, of course, you can find us on things like Facebook, iowacatholicradio.com to be our friend, and at IA Catholic Radio on Twitter. So, Bud, real quick recap. Hopefully people who've heard it are getting the idea here, but Leviathan, what do we mean by that, and why does it have relevance to the church today?
Yeah, we'll go through this one real quick, but we've mentioned the 16th century political philosopher Thomas Hobbes, and he just used this imagery of Leviathan, this ancient, majestic creature mentioned in Scripture, as an image for the modern state. And you know, as human beings, we do disagree about things. There's inevitably sort of like conflicts, or like you just discourse about the common good. And Hobbes thought the easiest way to solve this is that folks would sort of like set aside their own desire to impose their own will, and they would give authority to the state. And the state, as we've said on previous episodes, wouldn't provide peace or tranquility of order, as classic Christian theologians had talked about, but it would merely sort of like police folks so that, Bo, you could pursue your own interests, I could pursue mine, and that was all fine and good as long as we didn't, so to speak, like bump into each other. And
right.
We've not endorsed that idea. We've offered several criticisms. We thought it was important to go over because it's a very dominant way of viewing the world, and in a lot of ways, sort of the philosophical underpinning for the world we live in today.
Absolutely. So in part two, we sort of brought that forward, pointing out how the church, the bride of Christ, has interacted with the state, and especially in sort of as it became more and more in conformity with what Hobbes himself thought. We're not acting like everybody before that thought but it increasingly did. But by the time that you get Hobbes talking after the Reformation and the 30 Years' War, when it seems like religion is divisive, or at least that's the narrative that the state itself said, Leviathan becomes this, like you said, not so much peace, because Hobbes doesn't think there's primordial peace. Peace is sort of ringed of the world through violence and people, social contract, right? Giving up their right to be violent to the state. And so that sort of sets the stage for how the church navigated the very difficult world from the 30 Years' War, so like sort of after the Reformation, the 16th century, until now. The church navigating that, does it try to hold on to its old understanding of monarchies? How does it deal with new things like republics and democracies? A very fraught, 300 years, bud, that, we love this sort of history. There's a lot of what you and I both study that really get into that. But for the sake of what we wanted to bring up for the show, we could sort of fast forward to the prehistory of what we're dealing with now, what our listeners here in America are most likely dealing with. The United States, of course, is a very interesting reality for the church. I know that even in your studies with John Henry Newman, the idea about what's going on in America with the state, with the church and the state, even to people, for instance, in England or the mainland in Europe, is an open question. They have questions about Americanism. What does that mean in the church? And this sort of sets the stage for, I think, how we have maybe difficulties about how we interact with the state as a church here in the United States.
Well, yeah, and one thing we've tried to caution against, or we've said on previous episodes, Bo, is it would be nice if we could just punt on this project. So you point out sort of the shortcomings of the way things are, and there's a temptation to say, like, well, what's important is just that I work hard, I go about my business, eat my vegetables, pay my taxes, and then my Catholicism can be sort of cordoned off. We don't have to dive deep into that today, but we've tried to say that's really not an option for us. The New Testament says we're in the world, but not of the world. And when our Lord talks about faithfulness, he doesn't merely mention private prayer. He does say, go into your closet and pray, but there's also feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, all sorts of things, giving water to those who are thirsty. And in the Catholic faith, this is all worked out into the corporal works of mercy and into public witness. In America, that's sometimes tough because, there's a lot of things we could jump into. From the very beginning, you do have some good affirmations. So, like our very Constitution as a country says, like, all men are created equal and given inalienable rights by their Creator. There is a way to understand that where you're saying you're affirming human dignity, and, Catholicism has not been averse to rights language. On the other hand, there is a temptation to sort of take the American experiment, overlook sort of the rough edges, and make it kind of like the apotheosis or the apex of human political life. And various popes have warned against this. So, like, famously, Leo XIII, near the end of the 9th century, said, look, this isn't like a wholly negative project, but there are certain temptations and dangers that Catholics in this context have to be aware of.
Absolutely. And the sort of history of America becoming America, of course, is fraught with sort of anti-Catholicism, and not just like, Protestants who sort of take over and win out decide they don't like Catholics, but even the sort of silencing about how central Catholicism and its missionary work is to America being founded, and of course founded has very heavy quotation marks, because that's also the case of destruction of native cultures, them dying off because of disease, the slave trade. There's all sorts of complications to bring up. But to get to the 1800s in many ways, to talk about the modern Catholic experience and direct antecedents, because again, you can go way too far into this. Just as much as America is about, like you said, these very big universal ideas of like rights, language, and stuff like this, the church on the ground is also probably more ethnic in its beginning for Catholicism in a way that it wouldn't have been in Europe. Yeah. Europe having Christendom, and then it's sort of like breaking apart and all of those sort of ways in which that works out. It was still the idea that if you were a Catholic wherever, Bavaria, France, it was just still in the water. You could be against the church, but, France is France because the church had been there for so long. In America, now you're moving over and you're Irish or you're German, and especially with things like German or Italian, but in the 19th century, those two things don't really exist. And this is kind of hard for people to wrap their minds around. There is no Italy and Germany until the 1800s, and both of them are sort of very difficult concepts to come about. We act like they're very natural, but up until the 1800s, no one in Germany or Italian maybe broadly thought themselves that. They were, Swabian, or they were Sicilian, or whatever. So you get to America, now all of a sudden, we're kind of getting you into ethnic groups. Like, this is the Italian Catholics, and these are the Irish Catholics, and these are the German Catholics. And you start to see that the beginning of parish life in the United States deals with the social reality and the state with a lot of ethnic pride, a lot of ethnic community building that really starts to color what it means to be Catholic in the United States and how you would relate to the state. It's not so much that you are a churchgoer or you're just part of the country. It's you are a Irish Catholic dealing with American politics. You are an Italian Catholic dealing with the state, the federal government, etc. And I think sometimes it just needs to be said because people forget how important this was for Catholicism in America.
Well, I said something last week that probably sounded paradoxical to some listeners, and that's when you're a persecuted minority, Christianity is easier. And what I simply meant by that is the lay of the land is sort of easier to sort out. Because as Christians, what we're always navigating is the tension between our commitment and the way of the world. But when you're so for the Catholics who are immigrating to the United States in the 19th century, it's just clear who has power. It's, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. And so Catholics, they're not persecuted in the same way that the second century Christians were, but they just don't have a lot of political clout. And so they really do have these kind of ethnic ghettos, and the sort of what a Catholic is called to. There is a sense of hard work, caring for the least of these. Your entire social life is wrapped up in the parish community. And Bo, living today where we sort of craft our own identities, there's something really appealing about that. I wake up, I can actually walk to Mass. Most of my close friends all are Mass-going Catholics who share the same basic convictions. And this is, I know we're close to a break, but the difficulty in the 20th century and where we stand today here in the 21st, it's almost like the failure of the success of American Catholicism, because our communities very much moved into the mainstream. Catholics today are incredibly well-educated statistically, proportionally, and so that creates, as we've said over and over on the show, power is not a bad thing, but it comes with inherent risk. And that's what we're trying to figure out in our current context.
Absolutely. The sort of flip from being Catholic in America to being an American Catholic, that it comes with these temptations and definitive marks on those communities. We'll try to wrap this up when we get back from the break. This is the Uncommon Good, Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr. Again, if you want to make sure to check out what's going on, IowaCatholicRadio.com is a big place to do it. This is the Uncommon Good, and we'll be back right after this.
Thank you, Golden Rule Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, for sponsoring my show. John Lee and Eddie in the morning on Iowa Catholic Radio. Golden Rule, servicing Des Moines for over 15 years. They obey the rules to live by, especially the Golden Rule. Online at goldenrulephc.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Christ is the Answer with Father John Ricardo is provided by Confluence Brewing Company, a local brewery featuring seasonal and limited release beers located off the bike trail south of Grays Lake, and online at confluencebrewery.com. Confluence Brewing Company has growlers to go, apparel, and other gifts for family and friends. Confluence Brewing Company is available for curbside service and would like to thank you for your support. Thank you, Confluence Brewing Company, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio. Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Edible Arrangements at 2020 Grand Avenue in West Des Moines, helping people celebrate all kinds of occasions with food arrangements, treats, gifts, and more, online at ediblearrangements.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by the Sarah Vocations Ministry, including the St. Sarah Club of Des Moines and the Sarah Club of Council Bluffs. Sarah is an apostolate of the Worldwide Catholic Church dedicated to fostering and supporting priesthood and religious vocations. Sarahans strive to accomplish their mission through prayer, fellowship, and service to the bishop, priests, sisters, and all in religious formation, and in doing so to increase their own holiness. Learn more at joinsarah.org, joinserra.org. Thank you, Sarahans, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Thank you to Mercy One for their support of Iowa Catholic Radio. From the cardiovascular experts at the Iowa Heart Center to the pediatric services of Mercy Children's Hospital and Clinics, Mercy provides complete care for Central Iowa's adults and children with more than 50 primary care and specialty clinics in the Des Moines area. Find a convenient Mercy One location near you. Online at mercydesmoines.org. Have you downloaded the Iowa Catholic Radio app? It's easy through the Apple App Store on iPhone or through Google Play on Android. Search Iowa Catholic Radio and download the app. You can listen to Iowa Catholic Radio Talk or Iowa Catholic Radio Music. Listening to Iowa Catholic Radio is easy.
Back at the Uncommon Good. Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr joining you this Wednesday. Thank you for listening to the show. We're glad to have you with us here in the last segment. So, finishing out part 3 of Leviathan and the Bride of Christ, talking about the American experience with Catholicism and its relationship to the state. So, Bud, these ethnic communities have a very sort of ethnic understanding of, it coalesces. Even Italians from very different parts of the motherland will now become Italian Catholics, will become Irish Catholics, will become German Catholics in this new American context. And as they grow and get ingratiated in American life, they also have ambitions to be more fully involved. And as you pointed out, it was white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, of course, very much controlled many of the reins of power. But by the time we get to the 20th century, the Catholic communities are not only showing that they're an integral part of the American experience, but indeed trying to really, participatory, representative democracies be more a part of the Leviathan, the state, the ruling class. And again, like you said, this isn't necessarily bad, but it comes with certain temptations. And one of those temptations was to, as it were, make Catholicism an adjective. Mm-hmm. And an adjective, maybe not even your first adjective, maybe down the row adjective. And you see that as the American Catholic experience tries to outgrow the ghettos that were first imposed upon it, the sort of willingness to put Catholicism and the centrality of being a part of the Bride of Christ to the side to do what? But join that social contract of Leviathan. To the point where here in the 21st century, Catholic can almost mean a demographic description and no idea about theological commitment. Mm-hmm. I grew up Catholic is almost like saying, I grew up in the suburbs or I grew up in this state. And we get there because of the unique expression of how people lived in the United States as Catholics, but then, like we said, this temptation where we make an adjective of Catholicism, and then it sort of falls down in prominence about determining who we are.
Yeah, and historically, I think a key turning point in that entire history, Bo, is really, you look to 1960 with the rise of John F. Kennedy and his run for president of the United States. And it's hard for us to imagine. That's only 6 decades ago. But at the time, there are people in newspapers, prominent newspapers, saying, can we trust a Roman Catholic to be president of the United States? And JFK, that's a difficult task. That's a heavy crown. But and during his election bid, he gave a famous address to pastors in Houston, Texas. It was a group of Baptist pastors. And what JFK told the crowd is if I'm elected, my Roman Catholicism, which is very important to my life, won't impinge in any way upon how I rule. He had kind of this two kingdoms theology where there was his Catholic convictions, but then as president, it was almost like this different sphere that would be free from that. And then in political life since that time, you've seen Catholic politicians say similar things. Famously, Mario Cuomo, one-time mayor of New York, saying that he was personally opposed to abortion, but publicly he couldn't impose that on the rest of society. And that whole conversation, Bo, takes me back to, if you want to find a great interview from the show, not because of me and Bo, but because of our guest, Will Kavanaugh, he makes the point that sometimes as we go about our lives, we think the public sphere, it claims my body and what I do in my body, and then Catholicism or faith is about sort of my spiritual well-being and my spiritual destiny. And, Kavanaugh just explodes those categories and says, we're baptized, we're anointed with oil. And so we can't separate the two. I kind of mentioned that two kingdoms theology. Luther tried the same thing. he said, like, an executioner could be, and he's wrestling with the question of, like, forgiving our enemies, can be a good executioner. And in that kingdom, he has that role. And then as a Christian, privately, he sort of, like, forgives his enemies and whatnot. I don't want to get into that specific issue, but just that sort of bifurcation. One of our goals on the Uncommon Good is to disavow people of thinking of things in that way.
Well, I think that walks us up to, like, where we want to go next. We have to end the show here, but this idea of, why it can seem sort of squirrely when it comes to political understandings about Catholicism in our context here today that everyone listening to is dealing with. There's a lot of history that walks us up to that, but a lot of times what sounds like arguments within Catholicism about, like, well, how do we deal with the state? What are my allegiances? A lot of it is we are so imbued with the social contract theory of Hobbes. We believe Leviathan so central that we will easily do stuff like try to act like whatever political party has the most sort of affiliation with the Catholic Church must be sort of holy rather than just a political party, or that we have to do, like you're saying, this sort of, I have my private belief and my public belief. None of those being native to Catholicism, almost all of them stemming from Hobbes and Leviathan. So when we get to the next episodes, that's what we're going to get into, the practical discourse and ramifications of that. So, Bud, if people want to join Iowa Catholic Radio in its prayer life, what are ways that they can do so?
There are, of course, prayer opportunities on our app and the website, but you can also hear the Rosary broadcast daily at 5:30 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. We invite you to pray the Angelus with us at 6 in the morning and the Divine Mercy Chaplet daily at 3 p.m.
We got a lot of stuff coming up. I know that probably don't have time to, like, say all of them, but suffice it to say, the Iowa State Fair, there's going to be an Iowa Catholic Radio tent over by the Ann and Bill Riley stage. And Iowa Catholic Radio is supports as a causal agent for Casting Crowns and Jordan Feliz on Thursday, August 12th at 8 p.m. on the grandstand. And then later on August 15th, August 22nd on the Bill Riley stage, We the Kingdom to the Iowa State Fair. There's also the Man Up West Power Lunch is back. That's August 13th at noon. Then we got Iowa Catholic Radio's Consecration to St. Joseph, the 110th anniversary of the Diocese of Des Moines. That's out at St. Patrick's Irish Settlement. That's Sunday, August 15th at 4 p.m. with Bishop William Joensen. Women's Conference coming up. Also, we still have the Chief Engineer job opening. All of these things you can review at iowacatholicradio.com. And then, of course, this is a ministry that's beyond just the people you hear on the air, behind the boards or in the offices. This is your ministry as well. We covet your prayers, your volunteer time, but also your donations. Your material support makes this ministry possible. And you can donate at iowacatholicradio.com and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Rachel and I went on a date to a Casting Crowns concert like in 2002.
Oh, wow.
So I think with the Iowa State Fair, I may shave, dye my hair black, and try to reenact that experience. Lose 27 pounds.
You just got a few weeks. Well, on that note, we're told we got to go. This is the Uncommon Good. May Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, reign in our hearts, family, city, state, nation, world, solar system, galaxy, the whole kit and caboodle. This is the Uncommon Good, and we'll be back next week.
The Uncommon Good with Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr is heard every week on wonderful Catholic stations like this one, and anytime on podcast. Just search for The Uncommon Good.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and The Uncommon Good provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences. Learn more at mchs.edu.